As usual, joining us, Matt Atchity from Rotten Tomatoes and Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies. Hey, fun for everybody. And we are going to do Crazy Heart this week with starring Jeff Bridges. Mankiewicz, what's it about?
It's about a country singer. Jeff Bridges plays a country singer whose name is an interesting name, escaping me at this exact moment. Bad Blake. Bad Blake. Jeff Bridges plays Bad Blake. He's an alcoholic country singer. He's sort of washed up, known as a great songwriter. His career is very much on the fringes. He's playing very small bars. He's drinking a lot. He is clearly headed for an early grave. And in New Mexico, he meets a reporter, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and they strike up a impossible to believe romance.
All right, we'll get to that in a second. All right, so Matt.
No, that's fact.
I could believe in a romance with Maggie Gyllenhaal. Maybe just not between.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
oh no,
Maggie
Gyllenhaal is by the way, has never looked better than in this film.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
The reason I don't find it impossible to believe their romance is because he's somewhat famous, right? And, you know, if you're somewhat famous, you never know. And she's like in...
Yeah, but she's got it together a little bit. All right, screw it. Let's just get into it. That's the thing. So, Matt,
Right.
your thoughts.
Right. This one's a character piece, and I'm not normally a huge fan of character pieces. I feel like the strong point of this entire movie is definitely Jeff Bridges' performance.
No question.
It's one of his best performances in a long, long time. There's moments that you forget you're watching Jeff Bridges, and it's this broken down old singer. And it completely, he really, really becomes this old man, and you see him falling apart, and you see him, there's a scene of panic, or more than one, when he gets sick, you really buy into it. The scenes where he's, running, trying to find, there's the scene where he loses the kid.
Yeah.
And the panic and the disappointment in himself.
No question.
You really, really buy that.
Yeah.
But that being said, I feel like it kind of doesn't really go anywhere. It's kind of somewhat of a, I feel like it flirts with being a really cliched redemption story. It gets really close to that. It doesn't really, I don't feel it crosses the line into cliche, but I feel it kind of flirts with that.
Yeah.
And Matt, that's your opinion. On Rotten Tomatoes, though, most critics liked it, right?
Most of the critics really like it. It's certified fresh right now. Actually, as I checked earlier this afternoon, it's at 90%.
Yeah, it's
90%.
right
so it's 90% of critics really liked it.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't mean that they loved it. 9 out of 10, but the 90% of them liked it. Okay, so Ben, what did you think?
Well, I think so much of the film, of the story, is predicated on the believability of that romance. And I don't think that you can't put a famous guy in a romance with a famous older guy in a romance with a character played by Maggie Gyllenhaal and have it not be believable. I have no problem with that. She's got it together. She would never fall for this guy, ever. Now, they tried to sort of knock her down to size a little bit by suggesting she's been through the ringer a little bit. Men have disappointed her in her life. She is a single mother, making her, more accessible to a guy like Bad Blake.
Right, but it's not like you see her living in a trailer.
Right.
She's got a nice house.
She's
and
picking
she
up her
seems to
life.
have a job.
She's headed in the right direction. Would she be attracted to a guy like him and hearing him sing? Yeah. Okay. Might she spend a night with him? I think that's possible too. But his down and outedness and her own what we're able to piece together from her own life story, I just was like, really? I'm having a lot of trouble buying this. And if you don't buy it, obviously it undermines the 2/3 of the movie.
You
that
raise a
follows.
good point, because there's a moment in the movie where she says that every bone in her body says that
Right.
getting into a relationship with him is a
Bad
bad
idea.
idea.
Right.
And yeah, based on her character, you think, well, then why did she go through with this?
Right.
And
I
never
could see a couple of nights, but
And I never saw the spark in the movie where she was like, "Oh, I do like him." It just kind of happened.
That's part of it too.
Right,
I mean,
and
maybe
I was like, "What?"
Then we needed to see a moment of where there's such an unbelievable attraction, such a chemistry, that it overcomes what would be her obvious self-doubts. And look, and women and men all make decisions like that all the time, but we didn't have that either.
right.
So
Right. All right. Overall, like those are very good points as the problems with the movie. And here I'll add another small part of it: the mumbling. Right. And I know it's part of the character, and I know it's what Jeff Bridges does, and that's why I actually thought that it was very Jeff Bridges-like. To be honest, I kept thinking this is Jeff Bridges and not Bad Blake, because he always does the mumbling. And the mumbling got so bad, you could hardly hear it at times.
Oh, I didn't have a problem
I
understanding
didn't
him at
have
all.
a problem with that at all.
Really? Like, what? Okay, all right, Jeff, all right, come on. I know you're trying to win an Oscar, but help me out here. Enunciate the sentences.
Yeah, you want to run home? Oh, yeah.
I can't take it. Okay. Anyway.
Wait, you can't understand?
Okay, all right, please, I'm begging you. Anyway, the bottom line for me was I liked this movie better when it was called The Wrestler. So, you know, it's like I've seen this movie before, and it's, in fact, I don't know if a lot of you saw this, but it's a movie called The Great Buck Howard that came out recently with John Malkovich.
And then Colin Hanks.
That's right. If you take The Great Buck Howard and The Wrestler and you smush it together, it's exactly this movie.
I thought both those movies were obviously, I thought Wrestler was the best movie of 2008, and I didn't even think it was all that close. And I liked The Great Buck Howard.
Oh, I liked it too, yeah. It was a small thing.
So you're saying this movie is, to The Wrestler, what Walk the Line was to Ray?
You know, but you know what? I liked Walk the Line
never
too.
did well.
I mean, it's not a bad analogy. But
I never did well on the simile portion of the SATs.
I mean, to bring up biopics and to bring up stuff about musicians.
Right. It feels like I've been through this already, and not quite as good. And in fact, I don't think it's even close. In the end, I'll give you my rating. In the end, I you know, not bad. A little better than Princess and Frog. 6.2. It never got me. I mean, it's like what Matt said. At the end of the movie, I'm like, okay.
It's exactly, real quick, it's exactly like The Wrestler, but I didn't feel the same connection with the principal character, although, again, I agree, he's going to get an Academy Award nomination. LA Film Critics already gave him their Best Actor Award. He's got a Golden Globe nomination, Broadcast Film Critics Association nomination. I think he'll get an Oscar nomination. I'm wrong about that all the time, but they like Jeff Bridges.
Oh, he's definitely getting an Oscar nomination.
He's 0 for 4 on Oscar nomination.
Oh, he's definitely getting one. That's not the question.
Right.
And it's like I felt like the whole movie they did just so that Jeff Bridges could get an Oscar nomination.
But real quick, I'm sorry, and I know I ran on there, but the key there in The Wrestler was that even though Marissa Tomei is 6 billion times hotter than Mickey Rourke's wrestler character, there was a total believability in that. They broke her down to the point where I believed they could fall in love, and that did not happen in this movie, and it undermined everything.
Well,
Robert Duvall is in this, which I think is interesting because, of course, this seems like Tender Mercies.
Well, and I wanted to see more of the relationship between those two characters, right? Between the Duvall character and Bad Blake. That was a really interesting dynamic, and that, you know, when he's the one, the Duvall character is the one that Bad Blake really leans on and kind of grounds him. Whereas, you know, I agree with you about the unbelievability of the relationship with Maggie Gyllenhaal. You know, when she first appears, she seems really put together. There's nothing in her character that indicates how she's so easily seduced by this guy or why she just kind of falls for him that quickly. So I definitely agree with you there. I mean, now that being said, I personally think that this is a must-see movie because it's one of Jeff Bridges' best performances in the last 10 years.
The country singing is pretty damn good.
The singing is good.
Christopherson-esque.
Yes. Well, and he's talked about how he was hanging out with Chris Christopherson and they'd look at each other in the mirror and pretend that they were the same guy. Like, he totally looks like him.
He definitely channels Christopherson
Absolutely.
in this, and he does it effectively. And Colin Farrell is a young, hip country singer for an Irish guy. Pretty good too. He's not nearly as good, but it's not bad. I think T-Bone Burnett did all the music, and the music's pretty good if you like that kind of music.
I think it's up to me to make the absurd comment, so I'll make one more. Colin character there is named Tommy Sweet, right?
Yeah.
And where I grew up in New Jersey, there's a famous ice cream store called Thomas Sweet.
It's everywhere.
Oh, so it is
at least on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's on the East Coast.
Thomas Sweets.
Thomas Sweets, right?
Yeah.
And every time they said Tommy Sweet, I was like, his partner's like an ice cream shop? And I know it's not, right? But it was distracting.
Mary Omni Fields worked at Thomas Sweets, and I was way into Mary Omni.
Oh, that's funny. Carrie Mardoff worked at Thomas Sweets, and I loved her.
She didn't work there. She was always going there, and I always wanted to see her there.
Okay, anyway.
I didn't grow up on the East Coast, so I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
All right, so bottom line, Ben, what's your
You know, the problem with ratings and numbers is that they can distract from the overall point, and I'm going to agree with Matt. I think it's a must-see movie for film fans because I think Jeff Bridges is great, and I think he is an undervalued and underappreciated leading and supporting man over the last 40 years in Hollywood. That said, I didn't like the movie all that much, but I think you ought to go see it. I'll give it a 6.5.
Okay.
I'm right there with you. I've got to give it about a 6.5 based on the strength of his performance, and it's one of those things that You look at the last few movies he's done, Men Who Stare at Goats, you even go back to Lebowski, and you think, he's kind of just being Jeff Bridges. This is the first time in a long time I can remember him being someone else, being someone that it's oh, okay, right.
He was a good president in The Contender.
Yes, he is an excellent president in that. But there's still, I still even feel like in The Contender, there's still that little bit of Jeff Bridges where,
Sure.
When he has the line about, the best perk in the world is being able to call the kitchen and get whatever you want any time of day.
That's true.
And then he's so disappointed when they're out of something.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. My bottom line on it is, if you have your druthers, just go see Big Lebowski instead. Okay. I mean, if you haven't seen Big Lebowski.
And definitely go see The Wrestler instead if you haven't seen it.
Oh, yeah, that's
Right.
definitely true, too. All right, there you have it. And I believe our average is about 6.35 or so. It's pretty easy to calculate, probably around a 6.4. But we all pretty much agreed on this one.